And we are live.
Hey everyone, it's another Tech Talk with Bryan. We're discussing a few things today, actually. First, we're going to discuss cable management. Someone had brought up previously that they'd like to see how I go about doing my cable management and what all goes into that. Uh, there are also a couple other things that I'd like to discuss. Um, one being uh, the differences between the major CPU and GPU manufacturers, such as the two big ones being AMD and Intel, and then we're also going to talk about the major differences between the two graphics card producers, which would be AMD and NVIDIA, and how one versus the other might work better for your specific use case depending on what you're doing. So that's where we're going to go with that. First off, to talk about cable management, let me start by sharing my screen so you can get an idea of what uh, I was working with and how I went about doing all of this. So let me bring up the image I want to share so you can take a look at it. Okay. All right. So this is what my system currently looks like. And you can see how basically everything is pretty tidy. The concept behind cable management is you want to have as little of the cables you're using showing on the side that your motherboard is on. It makes things look very clean, number one, and number two, it also helps with airflow. So it helps keep your components cooler because they're not being blocked by your cables. So you're killing two birds with it. You're keeping things clean so it looks presentable, and you're keeping your components cooler because there's not as much clutter blocking them from the airflow. So that's what that looks like. Okay, let's show what the other a couple of other pictures that kind of demonstrate this. So you got this one here that shows kind of more of a side view. So you can see how things are plugged in. I'll go over what these are. So up here, kind of hard to see, but that's where my 8-pin power cable gets plugged in for the CPU. And that gets routed kind of back here and behind the motherboard. Here's my 24 pin. This is the USB 3 support for the motherboard. These are my two 8 pins that go to my graphics card. You can see the SATA cables here, and you can kind of see these down here. I've got a better picture of that I'll show you here in just a second. Okay, here's a better picture of that. So here you can see how the front panel connectors, these are for power, your LEDs on your front panel that show hard drive activity, whether or not the power to the system is on. And then you've got your USB connectors down here, and your audio connectors are over here. So you can see that there are grommets in the case itself that aid with routing. It helps tremendously to have these because you just route your cables through the grommets to the back side of the motherboard and you don't hardly see anything. It's really convenient. And then you've got a large cutout down here that all of your cables from your power supply get routed through, and those again end up back here. And now I'll show you what that looks like. So hold on a second. Where's that? All right. So this is what the back looks like. So you've got these cables that route down through, and then you've got this kind of mess of cables here. And what you want to do is you want to keep these zip tied and wrapped in some way so that it makes it somewhat tidy. Because what you don't want is you don't want to put your back panel on and have it kind of bulging out, because that doesn't look very good either. So you want to kind of tie these down as best you can. And the best way to go about this is actually to have first your thinner cables kind of clumped together, and then you just route them along with your thicker cables. Particularly, you see this one here, that's for the 24 pin. That's going to be your thickest cable. So you want to have everything kind of clumped together, and then you zip tie it all together and route it down and through, so that it kind of keeps everything flush up against this back panel. Now, one thing I learned as I've been building computers is that you also want to have a couple of cables kind of hanging out that are accessible in case you want to upgrade anything in the future. For instance, I have this cable here that you can see doesn't have anything plugged into it, but it's a Molex. And these are your basic 4-pin Molex connectors. In case I want to add anything in the future, it's very easy and convenient to get to. So if I want to add anything. And same thing with a couple of, you can see this SATA power connector up here. In case I want to add a drive later on, I have a very convenient way of finding it and connecting to it for added storage. So these are just kind of the tips and tricks that you learn as you go about building computers. You can see this cable here. It kind of looks like it's really not doing anything. What this is it's actually a thermal probe that came with my motherboard. What I've done is I've routed it back here, and I've used some electrical tape to tape it to the back of my motherboard, so it kind of helps me monitor temperatures in this area. A lot of times, particularly if you're overclocking, your MOSFETs, which are kind of back here in this area, do tend to get kind of warm, and you want to monitor those. And having an extra thermal probe back here kind of helps with that. So that's how that is all done. Hold on a second. I hope everybody's having a good weekend so far. I'm just kind of hanging out, as you can see. Let me bring something up here. And, does anybody have any questions? If you do, just drop them down in the chat. I'll be able to see them. Yeah, you're right, Ipan. Using Velcro is better than using zip ties, because zip ties, you've got to mess with them later on. You either got to cut them if you're adding more, or they can just be kind of a pain to work with. Velcro is better because it's reusable. So I agree with that. Using Velcro does make things easier if you have Velcro straps. Okay, let's go on into some of the other topics. I was talking about going into the differences between your major manufacturers of CPUs, and you have two. You've got AMD and Intel. And AMD, what's been great about them is that they have been kind of your lower price competitor to Intel. Intel's pricing has always been out of reach for a lot of people, particularly those that are just looking to build something cheap that's just used for accessing the internet, checking your email, that kind of stuff. Intel's pricing really doesn't adhere itself to that very well, whereas AMD, you can get a fairly decent processor for cheap, and it's been a good price to performance competitor. Today, what's been really interesting with AMD is that they are really starting to compete in the higher end, particularly with their new Ryzen platform. It's been quite interesting to see them finally competing with Intel on that level. Something going on with the stream there, Ivan, or are we looking all right?
We're good. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, the two main competitors, Intel and AMD, have been the biggest competitors for going back about 15 years or so now. And AMD has been kind of the price to performance competitor in that range. In today's higher end desktop, you also have the Threadripper line, and then you've got Intel's X299 platform. And again, AMD has come out with a really competitive platform to compete against Intel in that line. So if you're looking for something that is in the high end desktop and still want to save some money, AMD is again going to be your go-to platform. On the GPU side, you have AMD again, as they have bought out Radeon a number of years back, which was ATI's GPU platform. So ATI is gone, AMD bought them out, and now AMD owns the Radeon line of GPUs. And their main competitor is NVIDIA. So NVIDIA and AMD go back a long ways in terms of their competition. And they've kind of gone back and forth as to who's been the price to performance competitor. AMD currently is the price to performance competitor. If you're just looking at the retail pricing, we've got a really weird situation going on right now where GPU mining has become incredibly popular and has really raised the price on both the main manufacturers, NVIDIA and AMD. Going out and buying a graphics card right now, you're really going to get ripped off because the supply has really taken a major hit because of crypto mining.
Yep. So let me jet in there. Yeah. So before AMD was really big with crypto mining, and then as certain types of algorithms got updated, NVIDIA graphics cards have been doing pretty good. I mean, it all depends on whatever you're mining. But for example, GTX 1070s, 1080s, 1080 Ti's, like the 1080, I mean, the 1070s are probably the best as far as the power consumption goes with your hash rate. But like 1080 Ti's, people who just want more hash rate, they don't really care about the power consumption too much.
Right.
Those were the MSRPs on those, I think, was something around $699 for a graphics card.
Right. Roughly, yeah.
Now, it was just about a month ago. I was buying 1080 Ti's used for like $650 for people. And right now, people are selling them on forums for like $1,000 to $1,100.
Yep. Yeah, it's ridiculous how much they have been marked up because of crypto mining. And the issue really comes down to supply. The manufacturers, particularly, well, again, AMD and NVIDIA have just had a very difficult time keeping up with demand, and that's why the prices have gone up. Now, the thing is too, is these two companies could address this by simply limiting the amount of cards that people can buy at one time. That would be a huge benefit, particularly to people who just want to buy one or maybe two at the most graphics cards and use them in their machines, as opposed to crypto miners who buy 5, 6, 7 at a time. So if the manufacturers just said, look, we're going to limit you to 1, maybe 2 cards at the most, it would greatly help with the supply. It's just that it doesn't seem that either AMD or NVIDIA are really interested in doing that right now, as it doesn't really benefit them in terms of their overhead or their in terms of profit. They don't care who buys their cards as long as they continue to profit from them. That's all they really give a damn about. So they're not really going to do much in terms of trying to help out the PC community, which is kind of sad, to be honest.
So, question to you: if you were going to buy a used card and you knew it was coming from a miner, so that it was mining for a long time, would you still buy it used for, say, 6 months to a year from now?
It depends. It really depends on the price. You've got to
The price is
understand.
good. If the price is good.
If the price is good, I would still consider it. And the reason being is that yes, GPU mining is going to put a lot of stress on that card, but you don't really know how much stress was put in that card. I mean, it may have just been, you know, in a machine that was mined on the weekends. I mean, if it's a good price, I would still consider it. I would, simply because you're still getting a decent price for it, and you may be able to turn around and sell it again later on anyway, as long as the card still works. If you had the opportunity, what I would recommend is to try the card first, to actually see what kind of performance the card is currently able to give, and if it's comparable to what a new card is able to give in terms of performance, absolutely, I would go ahead and pick it up, because you're still getting good price for it. Now, there's one other thing to really consider when it comes to GPUs, your two GPU manufacturers, is you have your gaming cards, and then you have your production level cards. For AMD, it's their Frontier series. For NVIDIA, it's their Quadro. These are cards that go through a very rigorous amount of validation, and that's what makes those cards very expensive, is because they're going to be used. Yeah, go ahead.
Quadro, not Quadra. Just
Quadro, right. I'm sorry, Quadro. So the NVIDIA Quadro cards and the AMD Frontier cards are used for production level types of tasks. 3D rendering that's going to be used for say automobiles, for rockets, for any number of really specific tasks, use tasks that need that kind of validation, and that's why the cards are expensive. So if you're looking to do something like that, go with a Quadro or go with a Frontier card. That's going to be your best bet. In terms of the technologies that both are using, they're very competitive right now. You really aren't going to get much if you go with one versus the other. They're very, very competitive. I've actually talked to a couple of people in the industry and asked which card they would actually go with if prices were competitive, and they said either one would work just fine for those use cases, simply because the technologies are very similar right now in terms of their capabilities.
I kind of want to segue out of the graphics card and into CPUs because of Meltdown and Spectre.
Right.
Should people wait if they're wanting to buy a PC until Intel or AMD come up with a CPU that isn't vulnerable to these attacks?
My answer is this. We know right now that Intel is vulnerable to Meltdown, particular, and that's the biggest one. That's the real threat, is Meltdown. Yes, AMD does have some vulnerabilities when it comes to Spectre, but currently it doesn't look like they have any vulnerabilities with Meltdown. It looks like they're going to be okay with that one. I would look at waiting for at least the patches to come out to see what kind of performance hit you're going to take. If your use case looks like you're going to lose anywhere upwards of about 20% performance, I would hold off. I would definitely hold off and wait for them to come out with something that negates those security risks completely. AMD, like I said, right now it does not look like they're vulnerable to Meltdown, just Spectre. and they've already stated that they are working on a patch that will alleviate their RISC-2 specter. And once that comes out, it right now does not look like it's going to take a performance hit at all. So that if that's your concern, go with an AMD platform. You're probably going to be okay. Intel, hold off. Wait and see what the patch is going to do in terms of performance hit, and go from there. That's my recommendation right now.
All right. Yeah. They're also only releasing patches, at least for Microsoft patches.
Right.
They're not going for AMD. Actually, they're not going to release patches for the older models of CPUs because they've been bricked, so they can't even boot up any operating system. They can't really use their motherboard CPU anymore, and so they've I think only been doing it for like the later version of PalDriver and newer.
Right.
So wait a while for your patches too, if you can hold off on it.
Absolutely. If you can hold off on the patches, there are a couple ways to do that. What people don't understand is that if you've got the home version of Windows 10, it is going to try to force you to take the update. There's a great way around that. What you can do is you can go into the settings and you can tell your system that you're on a Wi-Fi network and you need to limit the bandwidth because you're on a cap. If you set that, you don't have to worry about that patch getting pushed to you because it's going to realize that you've got a cap on your bandwidth, and it's not going to try to push it. So that's a great way around that. If you're not on the Pro version, if you're on the Pro version of Windows 10, you can set that all up manually and don't have to worry about
it. What would make you go back to Intel CPU?
See, here's the thing. I've never been an Intel guy.
Okay, what would make you go to an Intel platform?
What would the main thing that would make me go to an Intel platform is if they tried to compete more on the price versus performance level like AMD have. That's the only reason I've stayed with AMD is because they have consistently been the price to performance competitor. They've been really good about that. Yeah, you take a hit in terms of performance, but I mean you can't beat the cost of entry. I mean they're just very very competitive in terms of the pricing.
Okay, and what about do you have that same type of divide between an NVIDIA graphics card and an AMD graphics card?
No, I've used both. I've used AMD and NVIDIA. I currently have an NVIDIA GPU, but I've used AMD before. And the only thing that makes me choose one over the other is, again, price versus performance. When I bought my GPU, there wasn't really anything that AMD had that competed with it very well in terms of price. I currently run a GTX 980 Ti, and at the time, if I remember correctly, the only thing, the top of the line AMD card was an RX 480, which really didn't touch it very well. I mean, in terms of performance, I didn't really see anything that AMD really had that was compelling at that time. So I went with an NVIDIA GPU.
Yeah, typically in AMD cards, the top card is the one step down from the NVIDIA graphics card. So it would rival something like the 980, not the 980 Ti.
Right.
And then they adjust their prices accordingly.
Right. Yeah, currently the GTX 1080 Ti is the top of the line card from either manufacturer. And the top of the line card from AMD is their RX, what is it? The Vega 64?
I think so.
Yeah.
I haven't been keeping track with the...
Yeah, the RX Vega 64 is their top of the line card. And it competes pretty well with just a GTX 1080, not a Ti. The Ti still kills the RX Vega card. So again, here's NVIDIA with the top of the line GPU that AMD can't really compete with.
There is a card from NVIDIA that's actually something like around $2,500. It's kind of like a prosumer card, if that's correct. Basically,
Yeah,
it's
they're
twice.
Titan XP. Yeah, the Titan XP.
No, it's Titan V, I think.
Oh, the new Volta.
The
Yes, yes,
new,
yes.
yeah.
The new Titan Volta.
So the only way you can order them is directly through NVIDIA.
Right.
And if I could get this right. And the price right now, it's limit 2 per customer. It's $3,000, $2,999.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
I don't know how much faster they are against the GTX 1080 Ti, but their FP64 is very, very high. Yeah. I don't know if it's worth a $3,000 just for mining, but I think that's why they have it. I mean, I don't think you're going to really get any super benefits of this over GTX 1080 Ti.
Now, the last I heard, at least in terms of gaming performance, you might get upwards of maybe 15 to 20% more performance from the Titan Volta. And you're paying how much more for it? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you're paying like 3 times more to get like a 15-20%.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't make any sense. So if you're looking to get a Volta card for gaming, that's a huge waste of money. Look at the 1080 Ti. Even at current prices, look at the 1080 Ti, because you're throwing money away on a Volta if you're using it for gaming.
Yeah, actually, I was wrong. It's 4 times the amount of the MSRP of a GTX 1080 Ti. Current prices, it's 3 times. Like right now,
even with current pricing, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a buddy of mine who actually does a tech channel, also here. Tech of Tomorrow is what he runs. And he says, as of right now, it doesn't look like pricing is going to come down anytime soon. Looking at we're probably looking at this to stay this way for at least a good 4 to maybe even 6 months, which is that's nuts.
And really nuts. A lot of the need for this are the games, like for NVIDIA or AMD to really put out a card that's really needed. There really isn't a game out there that really needs.
No, you're absolutely right. We don't have a situation today like we had in 2007, where we had a game that demanded more power than even the current graphics cards were able to handle. And that was the original Crisis. We haven't had a situation like that in quite a long time. And I mean, right now, my old 980 Ti handles all of the current games just fine on its own without any sweat, really. And I'm running a fairly high-end panel. It's not a 1440p. It's still 1080p, but it's an ultra wide. So it's got a lot of pixels it's got to push, and I can run everything on at least high settings, and get pretty nice frame rates. So there's no reason to get one of the newer cards right now. If you're looking to build a new machine right now, go with something used. I highly recommend you go at least with a used graphics card. There's no reason to buy new right now.
And it's knowledge. You're actually saving money by being knowledgeable, because if you just learn about how, just watch a few videos that you do, the more that they learn other videos that are out there, you learn basically where you might want to buy used cards from, not just from eBay, not from like Amazon. They're used, or resellers from Newegg. Just find a place like a community, a hardware community, a forum, and also know which graphics cards that's going to suit your needs, plus their warranty policy for the manufacturer. Because
here's now I've got a great point on that. This is why I recommend EVGA. because if you do buy a new card from them, they have a great program. It's called their Step Up program. So if you bought a new card from EVGA, you have a period of time. I think it's something like 90 days. Okay, if a new card comes out that is quite a step ahead in terms of performance, you can return that card that you just bought and just pay the difference for the new one, and there you go. You've got the latest and greatest. It's a great program. I don't know of any other manufacturer that does that. EVGA is pretty good. They also have usually some of the longest warranties for their products.
They're I think average for. I think if you're the initial buyer, you got a longer warranty, 3 years. This is kind of the top line. If other manufacturers do 3 years too, but if you're the second purchaser, second owner, it's 2 years, and you still don't have to register. But after that, I think you have to register the card.
You have to register, yeah.
I'm not sure about EVGA, but MSI, which I love their graphics cards.
Yeah, they're good too. They're another good one. Yeah.
Yeah. What they do is, say you bought a card 4 or 5 years ago and you paid, say, $350 for it, and it goes, it's kaput. What happened? It's no longer, or maybe it's, say, 3 years ago, and you had basically like a month or two warranty. What they'll do is, instead, if they run out of that card, say it was a GTX 780,
okay,
that you got for like $400. What they're going to do is give you a current generation card that's worth $400, as they'll send you back something like a GTX 1070 or GTX 1060 Ti or something like that. They'll give you an option.
Wow.
Which is nice, because if they won't have that card around after 3 years. It's really hard, especially if it was a good card way back then. So MSI did that, which is awesome, which is why I still stick with MSI cards. Yeah,
the two manufacturers that I've stuck with, I'd have to say are the same, EVGA and MSI for my graphics cards. They've both been great. I had a Zotac card for a little while, and I started having some issues with it, and they were a hassle to get the thing replaced. They finally did, but it was not easy. It was quite a hassle, and I don't think I'll go back to them for that.
They're not serial based. They're a Taiwan company. The top of the line cards are great. Like, I've never had problems with them. They overclock super well, because they're not exactly the same cards that NVIDIA or AMD pushes out. They tweak a little bit, and sometimes they do a good job. I think for some of their lower end cards, they don't. So that's something to watch out for with Zotac.
Yeah. I think it was a 560 Ti, and it worked great for, I'd say, about 3 or 4 months. And the thing was too, is I was at the time looking to put a water block on it, and it was just before I bought the water block that I'd started to have issues with it. It started artifacting certain games, and then it wasn't stable. So I went ahead and contacted them, and it took me almost 2 months to finally get the thing replaced.
Wow. Yeah, I still have a GTX 580. That's a Zotac amp, and it's on a water block. It was the best overclocking GTX 580, which is, I never got rid of it, and it's still working to this day. I think the overclock I got to like 1,120, and for back then that was incredibly high.
Yeah.
I mean, most cards back then.
Impressive for 580.
Yeah.
Because I think, wasn't the base clock like 800 maybe?
896 megahertz, I think, and then most people got it to like either close to 1,000.
Close to 1,000, yeah. Very rarely would you see it get over 1,000. Very rarely. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. Hi, Angel. Nice to see you around. Angel stopped by and said hi.
Hey, Angel.
That's a good one. What games are there going to be that's going to actually need like,
I don't know right now,
powers to step up?
Yeah, I don't know right now. I think what it's really going to come down to is, what kind of frame rates you're looking for. Because you notice with a lot of the monitors, they're really pushing the higher frame rates, upwards of 200, 200 frames a second. That's crazy.
Yeah. And and they're trying to get like 4K up to like 120 hertz.
That's nuts. And I think that's what's going to push the GPU market is those panels. Those panels are really going to push the GPU market because none of the games are really doing it. I mean, the graphics engines just aren't really pushing it like they used to. So there's no reason for those to be the reason you upgrade. It's going to be based on your panel.
So does that mean our games are going to be kind of stagnant for a couple of years?
No, I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is what's happened with a lot of programming, particularly at this point, is it's just become more efficient. The cards are using new types of technologies that just handle the higher end graphics much more easily than they used to. So in terms of that kind of innovation, they don't need to produce really high end or powerful cards anymore. I mean, look at the power requirements that they have now compared to what they used to be. The power requirements have really dropped.
Yeah, I remember always getting like a 1200 watt, and even before that was like 1500 watt was what people were getting, and now you couldn't try to fill up that much power consumption.
No. The CPUs are much more efficient. The GPUs are much more efficient. Mm-hmm. It's just there's no need right now to have. I'd say if you've got an 850 watt power supply, you are going to be good for a good long while because there's no reason to need that much power anymore. It's just it's not necessary. And who was it? I think it was EVGA. EVGA during CES, I don't know if you saw this, they released a 2200 watt power supply. I think those guys are just bored.
Yeah. I think they might be for just, I don't see it. They could be for like crypto mining where you're using 6 top of line cards.
Yeah, but in that use case, you're using multiple power supplies anyway.
Yeah, you're daisy chaining, you're
daisy chaining power supplies anyway. I mean, that actually makes more sense in that use case than to use one single, high wattage power supply. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking.
But like you said, they do like to push the envelope too.
Yeah, EVGA is they do like to push the envelope.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait to see what like 4 years from now. I can't see. I could see maybe going up to maybe 3 gigahertz as far as core clock. We might even have VRAM up to 16 gigs of VRAM as the norm.
No.
More than that? No?
I think that's too high. I don't. What would be the use case?
8K video resolution?
Here's the problem. I talked to somebody who was at CES, and they saw a couple of those 8K TVs that they have. You can't tell the difference. You put a 4K next to an 8K, unless you're like 2 feet away from the thing and really staring at it, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. No, who sits 2 feet away from their TV, from their ultra large TV?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point. It's become so ridiculous that the resolutions are past what the human eye can even differentiate between. So what's the point?
Yeah. I know this is kind of going off topic, but there's a video that I saw. So why isn't the color blue why is it very rare in nature as far as animals? Now there's only one animal that I think people know of that actually has the pigmentation for color blue.
Right.
And that's like the olive wing butterfly. But otherwise, anytime you see blue, whether it's in feathers, whether it's in any whatever animal that it is that you see the color blue, it's because of the structure. What the structure of like say the feather is, when light goes through it, only the blue color.
Gotcha. It's the way the light refracts off the structure of the. Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
Okay.
I'm wondering if there's gonna be like a mechanical monitor. So instead of pixels being flat and it's all based off of the color spectrum,
Okay.
that it can formulate some type of architecture where like instead of feeling it smooth, you're actually feeling a couple of like bumps and whatnot. And that's, you know, whatever lights shine. The only problem is like if you're gonna be in the dark, it's not gonna really
it's not gonna
show
be
the color, right? Anyways, that could drive some of the market to be interesting, but that's what CES is, isn't it? Pretty much, it's kind of like a new stuff for like technology and computers.
right. It's a consumer electronics show.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those things are fun to go to. I always want to go. You know what?
I've never been to one, but I would love to go at some point. I mean, they're just so much fun.
Isn't it in California somewhere?
No, it's in it's almost always, I think, in Las Vegas.
Oh, Las Vegas. Oh, I'm actually. We'll go there one year and actually get press passes and do.
That would be a blast.
Yeah.
The reviewers always look like they have a good time going, so I wouldn't mind going. That would be fun.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. How long has this been? Oh, wait. There's Red Panda. Hi. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
We don't hear anything yet. First. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, I guess.
So what kind of computer system do you have? Do you build your own?
No, I have an Omen laptop.
Oh, okay.
A gaming laptop?
Yeah, it's a gaming laptop.
So what are the specs on those?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I just bought it.
What's the manufacturer? Who's it made by? Asus?
Well, I'm pretty sure that it's made. Well, I got it on like the internet, but I'm pretty sure that it's Hindenburg Omen that made it.
Oh, okay.
I've never heard of that.
I don't think I have either. You said it's an Omen?
Yeah.
Oh, an Omen. Yes.
Oh,
okay. Hewlett Packard.
Yeah, that's HP.
Yeah.
The Omen laptops are pretty damn nice, actually.
Yeah, I've got one.
He's got his own special key that opens it up like a command center.
Oh,
you can
cool.
change the text of the keyboard because they light up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
The one thing I need to get used to with the HP Omen, because I just got one used, and their mouse tracking pad, they don't have a left mouse button and a right mouse button. It's just totally smoothed over.
Oh, really?
But if you click on that area where there would be the left click and the right click, it functions as the left click and a right click.
That's odd. That would take some getting used to.
Yeah, it does. Is that the same with yours, Red Panda?
No, my mouse pad has like two very small little buttons popping out.
Okay. That's nice. I wish mine had that.
Like on the sides, though. I'm not used to it yet, so I just use one of my Razer mouses.
Yeah, using an external mouse with a laptop makes things a lot easier. So you got any questions for us?
Kind of.
Okay.
I don't understand how like the motherboard inside of the computer is so small, but it still has so much of the data stored. Like, is
Okay.
it stuff?
Well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the BIOS, or are you talking about the storage devices, the hard drives?
The storage devices.
Okay, well, storage is really shrunk. You can get a fairly beefy solid state drive with like 2 terabytes, and it takes up the same amount of space as your standard laptop hard drives. That's why, and they're really fast. And then you've also got to take into account the NVMe drives, which, I mean, the things like the size of a stick of chewing gum, and has upwards of like 2 terabytes.
One of my computer's drives are like I have 3 drives and they're all 1 terabyte.
Oh, nice.
That's a lot of space for a laptop.
Yeah, that's a lot of space for a laptop. I'm guessing they're using the smaller 2.5-inch drives.
I'm not sure. I'm probably gonna have to get a screwdriver and unscrew it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't think I've seen a laptop with more than one NVMe slot. Have you seen one like that, Ivan? I certainly haven't. The only ones I've seen have only had one.
I've seen 2. I've never seen, like, I've seen with 2 NVMe or no.
On a laptop?
No, not NVMe's. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of mSATA.
Okay.
I've never seen NVMe on a laptop. Maybe it's.
I have. I've seen NVMe on a laptop, but I've never seen more than one slot.
Okay. But there's typically 2 for mSATAs.
Oh,
and then 2 for like SSDs or hard drives, 2.5-inch. I have seen some huge beefy laptops that could hold 3 hard drives, so they could probably have 2 NVMe's, but I'm pretty sure they just use 1 for NVMe and then 1 for, say, like a Thunderbolt.
Right.
Yeah. So there's always a trade-off when you're making a laptop, as far as.
Yeah, because you're very limited in terms of space.
Yeah.
well, thanks.
Oh yeah, thanks for coming on. Oh, what games? What games do you play before I guess you go?
I have Steam, and do you want me to read out all of my games?
Just the ones that you like to play the most.
It's a huge list.
Yeah, just read out the ones you play the most.
Location, Gary's Mod, Geometry Dash, Grand Theft Auto 5, Klepto, Tattletale, Terraria, Undertale, and VR Chat. They're all the ones that I mainly use.
Okay,
that's a good bit.
I would be able to go on forever if you wanted all of them.
Hey, have you ever played on one of those old like Super NES consoles and played some of those old school games?
No.
It'd be fun to see what you would think, because the graphics are horrible, but
yeah, with some of those older games, the gameplay was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is true. But
I think I have to go now.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for joining us.
But thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye. So, final words, Bryan?
Just like I said, currently, if you're looking to build a desktop, I highly recommend you go with a used graphics card until prices start to come down. If you have any questions or just want to get some advice, go ahead and drop a comment in the comment section below, and I'll make sure I address it. And we'll see you again next week. Next week's topic, I don't know yet. Let me know what you guys want to discuss, and we'll go from there.
All right, sounds
good.
Good
Weekend, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hey, how's it going?